Visitor Summit. We are waiting for the Minister to join us. So in the meantime, if I can run through some etiquette, obviously, please keep yourself muted. We will ask questions on your behalf from the Q&A, so put them in there. We're not going to be able to ask all the questions. I apologise for that now. We do have quite a long list of questions already, and more being added, and there's more people joining us all the time. So I'd just like to mention that this was put together after a discussion with the Business Improvement District in Eastbourne and the Hospitality Association. And so we've been working on this with Alex Polizzi originally from the summer. We were hoping to have a physical event, foolishly thinking it would all be over by now, but we're happy to be together with you online today, and look forward to being able to get back together again in the not too distant future. One other thing I should mention is that Christian Hayter worked with Joanne Rogers and myself quite closely on this event. Unfortunately, he's been taken ill and he can't be with us today, but he sends his very best wishes. Let me just check whether Nigel Huddlestone has arrived, and I'll come back to you in a minute. Yes, I believe Nigel is with us. So good morning, Nigel. Before we start with Nigel, let me just say that Nigel Huddlestone is a Conservative MP and Minister who comes from Lincolnshire. He comes from a very real world background. His father was a factory worker and his mother was on the tills, Asda. If you went shopping in Asda in Lincolnshire, you may well have met her. Nigel has worked for Arthur Andersen. He's worked for Deloitte Touche as an accountancy consultant, but he's also worked for Google as head of travel. And I'm just interested in the move that he made from a high-tech company like Google to the mother of all parliaments in a building that dates back 1,000 years and probably has some very interesting technological issues. So if I can hand over to Nigel, if you can unmute yourself, Nigel, that would be great, and take it away.
Well, thank you, Christina. Yeah, and there are certainly days where I do wonder whether I should be Oops, I don't know whether you can hear me. Is that working now?
It is now. We've lost your video though.
Oh, right. I'm sorry that, yeah, the connection's not great here. I don't know whether you can see me now on video.
Yes, you're back.
Great. Well, Christina, thank you. And it's good to be with everybody. I say there are definitely days in the role where I wish I was back at Google. But I think, let's be clear, we've had a really tough time in the tourism sector over the last few months. But we do have a lot of light, a lot more light at the end of the tunnel now. And I think we can be a lot more optimistic about next year than we were even a couple of weeks ago, to be honest. But I would say thank you for inviting me to today's summit. I know you've got a lot of attendees there, including some familiar names and faces for me, both colleagues in Parliament, but also from when I visited the area earlier in the year. I had a great trip down as part of the Enjoy Summer Safely campaign. I visited Charleston House, Glyndebourne, Fishbourne Roman Palace. I visited the Weald and Downland Museum, Lewis, and in my role as well as a sports minister, visited quite a few sports facilities. So I had a great trip. And that was great in the summer to get out and about and see the British tourism industry bouncing back. Now, that's not to pretend that we don't have difficulties. And even during the summer, I know that the picture was very mixed. Some did very well. Some were really still very challenged and, of course, still are in current circumstances. But the government was doing what we could to help. And I know many of you have taken advantage of the various schemes that we've had, whether that's the furloughing scheme, or if you're able to open up, the various grants, obviously the cut VAT in tourism, Eat Out to Help Out, as well as loans and other measures, all helped. But of course, what everybody wanted to do, and this was a resounding message I got right across the country, was everybody just wanted to open up and serve customers and do what we do best, which is, of course, be hospitable in the hospitality sector. And tourism is hugely important to the UK economy overall. It sustains about 3 million jobs. And in certain areas of the country, including yours, actually, the percentage of GDP and employment generated by tourism is even higher. So we know how important it is. But as I said, going forward, what we need to do is three things, really. For those businesses that have been closed and remain closed, we want to make sure that they're in a position to open up again at some point in the future. And that means supporting them through various measures. And I've mentioned loans as well as the furlough scheme, so that they're ready to open up when they can. Other businesses then is opening up as soon as it's safe to do so. Many have done so already. Obviously, the measures that are announced this week will help us move forward as well when we look towards the spring. But it's making sure that as many businesses can open as possible. And then the third bit is making sure that those businesses that are able to open can open as profitably as possible. And therefore, measures like cutting VAT and stimulating demand, and I think even the measures announced today on the global task force and any other measures as well to help ease international tourism will all help as well. But what we're doing at DCMS is working with the industry. We've had a working group focused on the visitor economy that's been in place since March, and that has advised, provided invaluable information, data in real time that's helped form and formulate some of the policies. And that's been a hugely important group to help us struggle through the coronavirus pandemic. And then we've converted that group back into the Tourism Industry Council, which is an ongoing body that helped develop the tourism sector deal. And that body now is working with me and the team here at DCMS to develop the tourism recovery plan. So what we're looking forward to in order to try and get our domestic and international tourism back to the levels of 2019 and indeed grow beyond that. So we've had great work, great help from the likes of Visit Britain and Visit England. You can see some of the promotional campaigns from the great campaign behind me now. But what I would like to say is that we've had invaluable contributions from industry bodies as well. The likes of Kate Nichols at UK Hospitality, UK Inbound, ALVA, BACTA, so many organisations involved in tourism have helped inform decision making and still do. And that body is a fantastic body and group that's helped us develop policies. And of course, the role that the DMOs have played as well. And I would like to say a huge thank you for the work that the sector has done and the degree of collaboration and cooperation we've had between the industry and government has been fantastic. I'd also say the awareness and the importance of tourism has never been higher in the political agenda. In Parliament, tourism gets talked about all the time. Hardly a debate takes place without there being some mention of tourism. And I certainly get called into Westminster Hall, adjournment debates and questions where colleagues quite rightly hold me to account about what we're doing in the tourism sector as well. And also, and I saw this when I visited earlier in the year, Sussex, the great work that the industry is doing itself to make sure that you can give confidence to customers that you're open and that you're open safely. And the immense measures gone into logistical arrangements, as well as actually improving hygiene and other measures to make sure that your premises are COVID secure, has made a real difference. And we see this in the surveys as well, that people have been very confident and very impressed once they've actually been out and about, got to heritage sites, tourist sites, and hospitality venues again. It gives them confidence because they see the immense work and effort that have been undertaken to get to the point of being able to open and serve customers again. Now, this week, of course, the Prime Minister announced measures yesterday. A lot of the information is coming live. It's going to be updated on the websites very soon in terms of the tiering, what's possible in the various tiers. And of course, on Thursday, everybody will find out which tier they will be in. We're also working on measures across the nations actually for the Christmas period plans. And again, I think we may have to wait until Thursday for that. But more information is coming. Hopefully there'll be clarity that everybody's seeking. Obviously, the announcement yesterday was quite high level. Some of the information and guidance is online. More of it will be coming on Thursday, and I think that will help everybody as well. As I said, I think overall, with the work that the industry has done to reopen tourism, with the prospect of a vaccine or series of vaccines that work, and with more prospects of domestic and international travel, we can look forward more confidently to next year and a much brighter spring and summer. We've got a long way to go. I do not underestimate the challenges ahead of us, and I do not underestimate the challenges that we've gone through and the massive strides that industry has done to try and stay open and serve customers as much as possible. But I really appreciate today's forum. I won't be able to stay for the duration. I think I'm doing a couple of questions now, but I'll make sure that I get a full feedback and readout from today's session, and really appreciate you inviting me.
Thank you very much, Nigel. Yes, we have a series of questions for you, so I'm going to pick out a couple, if I may. First of all, please can the government support the development of local rivals to booking.com? As you will be only too aware, booking.com and similar booking platforms take huge margins of profit away from the vital hospitality industry, and we need your help so that tourists are shown the full picture of what is on offer, but not just at booking.com, so that that people can book more easily without losing a great margin. Can you respond to that?
Yeah, look, certainly in my old job at Google, I'm very familiar with the online platforms and the vital role that they play, but also the commissions that they charge, and the huge footprint that they've got, and also then the dynamics in terms of pay-per-click and the challenges of that. I would say, look, there's a couple of things. First of all, you know, there's great value in advertising and promoting online, but everybody needs to do so very carefully, because I've seen through direct experience it's very easy to waste a lot of money and chase keywords that are not necessarily hugely valuable, or that are at a hugely inflated point. So I'd say, you know, go online, it's hugely valuable, but do so carefully. I think over the last few months as well, the online propositions across tourism offerings have improved massively. Actually, I've seen the DMOs go to great lengths, and if you look at tourism offerings, the content, the visuals, the videos and so on have really improved. Probably progress online that would normally have taken a few years has happened now within the last 6 months or so. And then in terms of how can we help the competition and put more offerings online, there is an initiative actually by Visit Britain, Visit England that is helping develop the online offering, and particularly focused at international and packaging the product. But I think there's more that we can do there, and these are exactly the kind of questions we'll look at as part of the tourism recovery plan. So there's no simple answer here, because it is a private sector business that's working in competitive economic environments. But I am aware that some of the terms and conditions can be challenging, and some of the commissions can be eye-watering. So I'm not going to promise any quick fix today, but looking at how we can best support the promotion online and offline of British tourism is exactly the kind of things we'll be looking in the tourism recovery plan.
Okay, thank you for that. Another question, which hopefully will just be a yes or no. Will you be asking the Chancellor to extend the 5% VAT rate for hospitality, hopefully permanently?
I'm constantly going to the Chancellor asking all sorts of asks. What I can say about this is obviously a decision ultimately for the Treasury, as all things are ultimately. That's one thing I've learned as a minister. All roads always lead to the Treasury. What I can say is that industry has done a great job at helping us provide information to help inform decision making, up to and including conversations with the Treasury, and that's always helpful. So data points and information on the impact of the cut VAT in tourism is really useful, plus the Treasury obviously do their own analysis. I think what we've seen over the last few months is that the Treasury has been open to all sorts of creative ideas. Some of us have been campaigning for quite a few years about the cut VAT in tourism. I have to count myself amongst them. I'll be fully declaring that. So I was glad to see it introduced. Obviously, current policy is that it's a temporary introduction, but obviously conversations are ongoing, and happy to continue to make the case with the Treasury, but I can't make any promises. And I don't blame you for asking.
Okay, well, thank you. If you can put the case for us, we would be grateful. And also, from a question from Bexhill Chamber, 15 million people will not be going to Spain in the coming season, and Spain alone. I think the biggest visitor destination from the UK is actually Italy at the moment. So all of those people are going to be looking for staycation holidays, which is great. We want some of that. But the nervousness is how we manage that, because there were problems with recreational vehicles and caravans pitching up in different locations in the UK, and not being accommodated in campsites. And then the other problem with those visitors is they tend to bring their own food and their own entertainment, so they're less likely to contribute to the local economy. How do we cope with that influx in the staycation visitors?
You know, there's quite a few points raised there, and again, all of these things will be considered as part of the tourism sector deal. So as I said, I advise everybody to work through your industry bodies in order to put ideas forward, because we're genuinely open to all sorts of creative ideas. But there's a few things. We definitely had a capacity problem with some real pinch points in both destinations and, you know, final destinations and actual individual resorts or properties this summer. I think we need a mix of offerings, because the reality is that there's always different budgets there. But also, I know we do have a fairly, you know, good, robust, diverse offering, and I think that's a good thing for British holiday makers. The point about pinch points and some of the logistical challenges and managing crowds and managing traffic is something we're working with local government on as well in some of these areas. But you also raised the point about, you know, the boom in domestic tourism. We did see that in certain parts of the country, not everywhere, last year. Of course, the inner cities and the cities areas are still really struggling, whereas in more rural and coastal areas, in particular self-catering accommodation, did particularly well. And we have seen a change in the booking patterns. I don't think that's permanent. I think we've still got to work rather than just assume that we're going to have a huge domestic tourism sector. We need to continue to prove value for money. And also, we need to try and push the shoulder seasons and make sure that we extend the season, because I think actually when people are able to do so, many people will go back to Spain and elsewhere. I actually spoke to the Spanish tourism minister just yesterday. But what we need to do is, given so many people had a really positive experience, often for the first time in years, of a domestic holiday this year, we need to make sure that they come back, maybe for the main holiday, but if not, for the shoulder seasons, because people had a great experience, like, oh, you know, this was actually really good, and have been to places that they haven't been to in years or indeed ever before. So we need to sustain that domestic market. So that involves marketing activities through Visit Britain, Visit England, and a whole host of activities. I would say we're in a good position for next year for domestic tourism, but we can't take anything for granted. I think the international sector will bounce back, particularly for leisure, quite quickly. There's hundreds of millions of pounds that people have got in vouchers, ready, waiting and willing to go abroad and get a bit of sun. But we've got a great proposition here, and we need to work hard and promote it, and we will do.
We are running out of time now. There is just one more quick question. Well, there's a lot of questions, actually. We will send them all to your office so that you're aware what people are asking. But the final question is, does the government intend to pursue the concept of tourism zones? And if so, are you able to tell us when that investment is likely to happen? And please give special thought to coastal communities, where we have all sorts of other problems as well in terms of being on the coast. So
well, on that latter point, Yeah, on that latter point about coastal tourism, I've actually got another meeting with a coastal tourism roundtable in about half an hour's time, actually. So that's very live and real. And I particularly understand the issues with coastal tourism. I was actually a member of an APPG for a while, and we did a study on that, and it raises all sorts of issues with connectivity and, you know, lack of investment for a long period of time. Tourism action zones, the intention is to try and help turn around some previously robust tourism destinations that probably need a bit of investment to reinvigorate themselves, or new areas that have got a lot to offer that have probably been undervalued. So they're very much a live policy. Obviously, I think everybody knows that tomorrow we're going to get the spending review, and this is just a 1 year spending review this year. So it's unlikely we'll get tourism action zones as a commitment out of this, but there's still very much an investment that we want to pursue. There'll be a key feature, I think, of the tourism recovery plan in terms of how one of the vehicles we can use to help revive and sustain the UK tourism industry. So very keen to pursue them still, absolutely a key goal of mine, and I look forward to seeing many proposals from across the country when we get them going, and I'm sure we'll have a very robust one from you guys as well.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have run out of time. I'd like to move swiftly on to a presentation from Mark Driver of Rathfinny, and also Nathanial Hepburn from the Charleston Trust. They both sit on a group called Sussex Modern, which is doing a huge amount of work to promote Sussex as a great business destination, or visitor destination. If you have a chance to watch Nigel, we'd be very grateful. And we're also very grateful to the MPs, the Sussex MPs who are with us today. So Sussex Modern then, that includes Mark Driver, the owner of Rathfinny, Nathanial Hepburn from Charleston Organisation, Kat Bear from the South Downs National Park, and Stuart Drew from the Delaware Pavilion in Bexhill. They work very closely with the County Council and with Locate Sussex. So I'd like to hand over to Nathanial to introduce Sussex Modern to everyone and how we can drive the Sussex visitor economy.
Thank you very much, and thanks for arranging today. Thank you also to the Minister for joining us, and continuing conversation we had back in the summer at Charleston with the vineyards and South Downs National Park. So good to see you again, and thanks for all of the support that I know the government's put behind many of our businesses this year. So the Cultural Recovery Fund on behalf of our cultural organisations, but furlough on behalf of many of our businesses. And look forward to hearing what announcements are made tomorrow and how we can work with you on tourism for the area as well. So I want to kind of introduce the project that Mark and I and others have been working on for the last couple of years. But first by looking maybe at some other areas and really to think about the importance of a good story. I show here Visit Kent and Garden of England, and they tell an amazing story of food and drink, and they've delivered extraordinary investment with startup restaurants and food markets. You move on to Scotland, and we all know what we're getting if we go to Scotland, these kind of ragged, robust kind of mountains and the sense of adventure that one gets, as well as people in kilts, it seems. And I show here something from elsewhere in the world, Margaret River region, and maybe we'll come back to an ambition for something like that for Sussex. But instead, this is what we have in Sussex at the moment, and for many years it's been a very fragmented offer, something driven locally with a whole host of different brands. And one of the challenges that presents, and the visitor data backs it up, is that there is a very little perception as to what Sussex is or what Sussex stands for. And so the campaign Sussex Modern seeks to address that. But let's look at some of that data. 2016 Tourism Southeast research that 43% of audiences don't know where East Sussex is. So if you don't know where East Sussex is, the chance of knowing where Horsham or Lewis or Eastbourne or Crawley is reduced as well. And that's just domestic tourism. If you look at what that might mean in terms of international tourism, there's a real challenge. 68% of day visits to East Sussex stay for only 6 hours, with half leaving within 4 hours. And we all know the importance of overnight stays to really kind of drive the economy. In terms of businesses, 73% of business and property developers have poor or no perception as to what Sussex stands for. So where other areas have really kind of built a story for themselves, we still have that story to tell. We still have an overarching image, an overarching narrative to create. So Mark, do you want to pick up here?
Yeah, remembering to unmute. Morning, everybody. So I think that Sussex has got a great story to tell. We occupy probably a unique position within recent British thought, art and literature. Just look at some of these names here, from Eric Ravilius to Vanessa Bell. Sussex is home to some of the most important artists really of the 20th century in England. We have a few of those there, but we also have some globally important cultural organisations in Sussex, from Glyndebourne, the Brighton Pavilion, Charleston and Fairley Farmhouse, just to name a few. Over the last 15 years, some £60 million has been invested building this world-class network of for the visual arts and galleries. So including the pictures there of the new production facility at Glyndebourne, the depot in Lewis, Ditchling Art and Crafts and Pallant House Gallery. Along the coast, we have the fantastic Hastings Contemporary and the Delaware Pavilion, Eastbourne's Towner Gallery, which I should mention recently was named Art Fund Museum of the Year. And over time, we've also developed a world-class viticulture in Sussex, ourselves included, so the Rathfinny estate. And a lot of money has been invested, both in East and West Sussex. Is now the largest producer of wine in the UK, host to some of the world-class producers in the UK, including people like Ridgeview, Whiston Estate, Bolney, ourselves, Rathfinny, to name just a few. Sussex wines were chosen by the Queen to be poured at the various state dinners, including the one with President Obama not so long ago, and are regularly served at Buckingham Palace. And our sparkling wines are now exported all around the world. They're poured at some of the top hotels, bars and restaurants in the UK and across the globe. And wine tourism is growing. Some lovely pictures here of summer events, including picnics, and we've all had to be a little bit creative, as you know, over the summer period. But the wine tourism is a very strongly growing sector. At Rathfinny, we attracted over 40,000 visitors over the last year. And they're not just attracted by the wine, they're obviously attracted by other things that Sussex has to offer, including the incredible art and the landscape. So with incredible cycling paths, walking, but also shouldn't ignore water sports and other outdoor activities. The existing visitor economy is thriving in Sussex. And we've got these beautiful South Downs, which is the geological feature which attracted the artists to Sussex and the viticulturalists to Sussex. And there is this symbiotic relationship between art, wine and landscape, which attracts a lot of column inches, as some of the previous pictures showed. There are often articles about the top 10 vineyards to visit, the cultural trail of Sussex, the top 10 walks, etc. all attracting a new audience to Sussex, which is what Sussex Modern is trying to narrate. Nathanial, shall I pass back to you, leaving this lovely picture of Harry Styles at the Seven Sisters, which was on the front page of American Vogue. Quite an incredible picture.
I think it's extraordinary to kind of just dwell on that, the column inches that are generated, but and the fact that American Vogue chooses our own Seven Sisters as the place for its front cover, for the front cover of its first solo man, as it were, as well. So an important moment, I guess. So on the back of a major exhibition in 2017, at which a group of the galleries came together in central London with our collections, we developed this tourism campaign called Sussex Modern. A year later, we joined forces with the Sussex Wineries Group to build on this pilot. And we have created a story to talk about Sussex, to talk about the kind of hero products of Sussex, to talk about the things that set Sussex apart from every other county in the country. Not everywhere has got this world-class network of cultural organisations, a network that's equivalent to visiting a major city. Nowhere else has the kind of breadth and strength of viticulture offer, and we all know that nowhere else has a landscape quite as beautiful as ours. The model is very much about joining the dots, curating your own visit, picking your own trail, finding your own route through, curating your own experience, but selecting some of those kind of global leaders to take you on that journey. It's now a consortium of 22 businesses. We've worked with East Sussex County Council, West Sussex County Council, Locate East Sussex, Arts Council England, and others to build the campaign. I guess it's very important to say we do talk about Sussex, not East Sussex, not West Sussex. And it's from all of our visitor data, the visitor doesn't care about those geopolitical boundaries. They might present challenges for us to work across those boundaries, to work across the different LEPs, as well as the different county and district boroughs. But from a visitor perspective, Sussex is the brand, Sussex is what is understood. We all know what an amazing place it is to live in, to work in, and to make our businesses here. What I think we are trying to tell in this presentation, and I think one of the real challenges for any business leader through this last crisis is kind of keeping that level of ambition and the eye on the long game. I showed a slide at the beginning about Margaret River, and I think there's a real ambition that what Sussex could have is this global destination, a place where people come from around the world to experience the wine, the landscape, and the art. We've invested in a brand and a website, growing a strong media audience. And what's next? What's next is telling the wider story of Sussex, because it's not just about those hero brands, although it's really important to differentiate there. What we want to tell about is how across the region, sorry, this is the route planner on our website, where you can extract your own route and curate your own trip, and it conveniently kicks it out into Google Maps so you can cycle it or walk it or drive. We want to tell about the other extraordinary businesses that tourists need when they come to the area, whether that's the network of new breweries that's springing up across the counties, extraordinary gardens like Great Dixter or Wakehurst, the offer of stately homes and castles. And what's really important is that for us, every county's got beautiful old buildings and stately homes. We need to tell our visitors about them, but as part of a kind of curated experience and keeping our eye on the hero products as well. Our pubs. We could play a game of guess which are your pubs here. This is just, I think, my 3 favourite pubs in Sussex. Our shops, quirky shops, the interesting shops, the independent shops that make our towns, our villages, our communities special and distinctive. And of course, amazing, interesting places to stay as well. So over the next couple of years, or over the next year, hopefully, we'll be building those kind of curated experience and extending our offer, whilst keeping a clear story as to what Sussex stands for and what its identity could be, but also spreading that and sharing that out amongst other businesses as well. Thanks, Christina.
That's really interesting, Nathanial. Two questions have come forward. First of all, how do we create a movement, a budget? How do we fund getting that message out that Sussex is a visitor destination? Because the logos you showed at the beginning, which were a multitude of different logos with different identities, how do we get that to coalesce? Where do we get the funding from? Maybe we could ask the MPs as they're here, Sally Ann Hart, Hugh Merriman, Caroline Ansell. Not sure if Nazgani is with us, but can we get access to the sort of funding required to promote the Sussex brand? What are your thoughts on that?
I was just going to say something. Sorry, I was rather hoping that Nigel will be on the call to sort of listen, because I've written down that we really need a big funding pot. And we've got the shared prosperity fund, so some of the tourism fundings come from previous EU funding, and we've now got the shared prosperity fund as we come out of the EU. So I was rather hoping with Nigel on to be able to push the point that we do need a proper tourism funding pot. So that's what I think we need to all be pushing for.
That's great, thanks, Sally Ann. Caroline or Hugh, do you want to add anything to that?
I have approached the department off the back of Stuart Drew, as he always does, lobbied me to ask if there were any funding pots that might be available for this kind of domestic offer. I didn't get a positive response from Nigel's parliamentary private secretary, but obviously we can try and get a little more, but the initial view was there wasn't anything specific to match this. I'm sorry to bring negative news.
Okay, well, as a group, we can carry on lobbying through the Alliance of Chambers in East Sussex. We can lobby the Minister and also the Hospitality Association. The other thing we need to think about is how we all the businesses who are on this call today, how we can all get behind this and use this facility of curating your own visit and using the finding map for deciding where to go. So we need to actually share that with all the businesses in Sussex to make sure that they send it out to all of their networks and all of their customers for the last couple of years. Is that the sort of thing you want to see, Mark and Nathanial?
Well, first of all, I really appreciate Sally Ann and Hugh and Caroline's work. I think we keep our fingers crossed that there will be some sort of announcement tomorrow as to some sort of spending on tourism for next year, because I think it is so important that we can hit the ground running. We know that people are going to be booking their domestic tourism trips in January. Soon into the year, people are going to start feeling the positivity. The vaccine news all contributes to the fact that people will be booking holidays. And as soon as we're able to have a campaign ready to go, I think that's really important. We have been successful in securing some funding through the local economic partnership, through the LEP, and we continue to kind of work on some of that. I think what we as a group of businesses have tried to do is kind of create a vision and show a sense of ambition. And I think it would be really useful to join forces with the chambers and kind of continue to roll that out. I think that the kind of business-led kind of energy is really important. I mean, people like Mark, who put his own money into this ambition and to this vision, different from myself. But I think that's really, really important, and to kind of expand that and bring other businesses on board is really, really important.
Yeah, I would just add, Christine, that you know, what we're trying not to do is you know, we're not here to alienate the existing visitor economy. We're here to try and attract, essentially, a new and embrace a new audience. There is a new audience out there who we are attracting, and we know we're attracting that new audience through our through the feedback that we've got through the social channels that we established over the last 2 years. And it's embracing that new audience who are coming to Sussex and looking at Sussex for possibly the first time, and not just East Sussex, it's East and West, which is, I feel, very important. As Nathanial said, people don't think about Sussex, I think, as East or West. They think about Sussex, and it's trying to have this joined up approach which looks at the whole of East and West, and fast forwarding, you know, 5-10 years perhaps, people are flying into Gatwick and they're heading south to the winelands of Sussex, as you would do if you flew into Perth in Australia, because there's no other reason to visit Perth unless you go to the Margaret River, because it's just swimming with sharks, or you have to be in the metals industry. So, you know, the main reason why tourists visit, one of the main reasons they visit Perth in Australia, is for the Margaret River, and the knock-on benefits that has to the whole visitor economy, to, you know, to the walking, to the cycling, to the water sports, to the whole of the Western Australian economy, from the Margaret River, which was essentially set up by a group of Sydney dentists, who had identified a patch of land which was ideal for growing grapes, as we have in Sussex. The knock-on benefits to the whole visitor economy has been incredible, and this is why I was so keen to join up with the arts organisations, because I think the arts and the wine of the landscape, we have this incredible offering now, which we can show and attract this new audience, this exciting new audience who are visiting Sussex perhaps for the first time.
Thank you, Mark. We're getting some really good comments in the chat and in the Q&A from people wanting to see us promote the area and to start talking about Sussex rather than just East Sussex or West Sussex.
Christina, sorry, may I ask on this before we move off, if I could come back to Nathanial when he talked about the sort of campaign that we need to see to really showcase who we are and tell our story, particularly ahead of sort of reservations that could be coming, you know, more imminently with the positive news. What kind of budget are we looking at? What kind of numbers would you ascribe to something that would do justice to that, just to give me a sense of what we're looking to lobby for?
Well, I think there's what we can do quickly and what we should do in the longer term. You know, quickly to make sure that we've got a campaign ready for next year that's going to have a big impact. I think we're looking at something in the region of 250,000, 250, 300 will give us a campaign that can hit the ground quickly. Obviously, there's a longer term ambition, and we can share some benchmarking of other counties and sorts of investment in other areas, but that's something to build towards. I think at this point, and Christina arranged this as a kind of crisis summit in some respects, this is talking about next spring. Most of our businesses have limped their way through this year with a lot of government support, and it's about how we ensure that our shoulder seasons, as the Minister talked about, you know, we're early and ready to meet those audiences. And we've got a kind of lively campaign in April and May when our organisations all come to life with extraordinary programmes and an extraordinary offer. So it's about having a programme all the way through next year to meet our audiences. And I think that's the kind of ballpark of what we could have a meaningful campaign with that sort of amount.
Thank you, that's really helpful. Thank you, Nathanial.
Also, Christina, can Can I just add, because I'm a bit of a party pooper in the sense that I just sort of dipped into the department to say, is there money available for this type of thing? Any further explanation, or the minister being involved, or the other East Sussex MPs lobbying as a group. So it's not to say that we can't go back with a more sort of tailored ask, and which we will do so as East Sussex MPs. We always work together. Mine was just literally, is there anything that's sort of there right now? It's a general matter, and the answer back was no. But that can be the end of it, and won't be.
I think it's important to also stress the kind of level of private investment that's already gone into this. As businesses, we have all contributed significant amounts of our own time and our own capital and our own investment to do so. So it will be very much continuing that public-private partnership that the campaign's built on.
Thank you. We've just got time for one more comment quickly. Lord Lucas has mentioned asking the landscape side of Sussex Modern to focus on health and well-being, which is foremost in everyone's minds at the moment. And also we have the Eastbourne Hospitality Association with us today. So I wanted to ask Mark Cotman if he could tell us what the hospitality sector can do to promote this. You know, every single guest house, every single hotel has a huge database of clients who've been to them over the last couple of years, who could be persuaded to come again and to spend more time. I think the crux of the matter is if you promote your own hotel or your own town, you might get people to stay for a night or two. If we give them 10 good reasons to come to Sussex, they might actually stay for a week or two instead. So can I ask Mark Cotman what the Hospitality Association can do to help us promote this now?
Hi, Christina. Good morning. I think on behalf of our association, I think we'd probably be looking at, so with people like Rathfinny, etc., we need the itinerary planning to be on our sites. I see Rathfinny are on Visit Eastbourne, for example, but you have to come off Visit Eastbourne to book a tour. So I think it's more a case of that people that are inbound and international and domestic like to plan their visit, and with the tools we have available on Visit Eastbourne now, you know, this will actually help us a great deal.
Yeah, I think if I can just chip in here, I think one of those charts which Nathanial showed earlier showed that 68% of visitors to Sussex are staying for just 4 hours. And as you say, if we can persuade them, if we can show them, map that route, and organise your own itinerary, which gives them that excuse to stay for not just 4 hours, but for 4 or 5 days, then the knock-on benefits to the whole visitor economy are going to be huge. And this is how we hope to see Sussex Modern as a site develop over the next 12 to 18 months. So it starts to show a lot more of the accommodation, of the restaurants and other things that people will expect to see as they arrange their itinerary, hopefully over a week or two.
Thank you. We're going to need to move on. Time is marching on this morning. As I said, I will send all the questions to all the MPs and the Minister and all the panelists. So keep putting your questions in there and we will be sharing them even if they're not aired this morning. Right, thank you very much, Mark and Nathanial. I think that's a really interesting programme that we can all get behind, and we can all start lobbying through the MPs to get a fund together so we can compete with people like Kent, who have a well-funded Visit Kent programme. And we need to compete with that to make sure that we get the sort of visitors we need. Okay, I'd like to move to the next section, which is on behalf of the the Alliance of Chambers in East Sussex. As you can see, we are funded by the European Union and the government and the business hothouse at Chichester University, and have programs that we can deliver now to help all the business people who are watching today work on their business to improve it. These programs are run by EDEAL Enterprise Agency and the Let's Do Business Group, and there are programs and funding available across East Sussex for businesses who need help now. So don't just think about during lockdown, or don't just think about long way in the future. We need to work together now, both during and after lockdown, to come out of the pandemic. As I said, this is fully funded. It's funded by the European Union under the ERDF, which is a regional development fund. It's funded by the government and it's funded by the local authorities, specifically Lewes and Eastbourne, Wealdon and Rother have all put funding into assisting your business. And these programs can be bespoke to what you need. So tell us what you need. Please bear in mind that there is available now, there's leadership and management coaching, there's a cost analysis coaching, you can have efficiencies support, that this is a one-to-one business mentoring or coaching, or this is in workshops where you can work with other businesses. It's physical and it's online as well. This counts as education, and education is open throughout lockdown. So if we can find venues that will allow us to come together, we can come together in a controlled environment like the photograph there shows you, or we can do it online, whichever you prefer. Whether you need help with your social media, your new digital routes to market, whatever you need, just tell us and we can organise it. Between the Let's Do Business Group and EDEAL, we have something like 40 specialist consultants who are experts in their field and who have run extremely successful businesses themselves. So do contact us. Broadly, it comes into two brackets. If we start with the second one first, we know that a lot of people are being made redundant at the moment. EDEAL has been going for nearly 40 years now, and one of the first tasks it had was to help when Birdseye closed their factory in East Sussex, and we lost 1,000 jobs. All those people got redundancy payments, and what EDEAL did was make sure that they didn't invest that money rashly and lose it. So if you've got staff you're having to make redundant, please contact us, let us know. We will talk to them about potentially working for themselves, but we will make sure that they don't lose their money. And if you look at the figures put out by NatWest, NatWest will tell you that in the first 12 months, 80% of new startups fail and lose their money, lose their investment. When you come through EDEAL or a program, a startup program with the Let's Do Business Group or EDEAL, that turns on its head, and our statistics show that 90% of businesses survive successfully if they find out how to run their business. So when you start a new business, you don't know what you don't know. So let us help you. So that's one side of it. The other side is managing in lockdown and out of lockdown, is adapting to what is an extremely fast moving and uncertain market and managing the change required over the next year. Really, not only do we have the pandemic to deal with, we also have Brexit, which will bring us some new opportunities that we need to take advantage of. So contact us. I'll come on to some contact details. So contact us if you need help, and we're here to help you. You can have your own business consultant working alongside you to help you make those difficult decisions in your business without cost, but you need to contact us. So if you're based in the Lewes district, that's or Eastbourne or Wealdon, so that's all the way from Crowborough down to Eastbourne and across to Lewes, all the way along the coast up to Chailey. If you need support, there is support available, and I will send these links out on emails as well. There is also grant funding. You have to match fund most of it, but your funding can be more than doubled if you contact us and go through some of our grant funding portals. If you're based in Hastings or Rother, then the Let's Do Business group are there for you. There is a specific programme at the moment for Hastings, Central Bexhill and Sidley called Chart. And also the Let's Do Business group are specialists at advising and finding funding for you. So as I said, I will send those details out. Just to give you an idea of who we work with at the Alliance of Chambers in East Sussex, we have all the MPs here today, which is a testament to how much they value their Chambers of Commerce. So we thank you all for your support. Also the members, if you can come on to the next slide, thank you. The members, we are chambers all the way from Rye across to Lewes and up to Crowborough, all the Chambers of Commerce, plus the FSB and the Locate East Sussex. So between us, we have 4,000 business members with 18,000 members of staff, and that gives us strength in numbers. We can work together if there's an issue in a particular area. We can work together to support our MPs and to talk to ministers, and it makes a huge difference when we work together. So just to come on to some very quick pictures to give you an idea of what life is like and what life used to be like. Here are some of the programs that we run where people are separated by 2 meters, all masked up, but working together. Which we can do again, and we can do even through lockdown. But prior to lockdown, just to remind you, this conference would have been held physically. The last one was the Best for Biz conference. That's Rupert Clubb, who is doing the opening welcome. And we had some terrific panels there who obviously didn't need to sit 2 meters apart back in the old days. And we had a fabulous audience of 230 people who came to Uckfield to attend the conference. And the audience, as you can see, were really enjoying it. So we look forward to a time when we can get together again, when everybody's vaccinated. And hopefully that won't be too far away. So that's everything about the programs that are available to help you. For goodness sake, do contact us on behalf of your staff if they've been made redundant, on behalf of yourself to help you work through the pandemic and to survive it, to revive your business and to thrive going forwards. Thank you very much. Right, I'm assuming there won't be any questions for that section, so I'm going to send that out to everybody. We now have a very short break, so everybody can grab a coffee, go to the loo, whatever you need to do, check your messages. Please be back at 11:10, where we have our expert panel. The expert panel is being hosted by Rob Cottrell, the Chief Executive of Eastbourne and Lewes Councils. And we will have Alex Polizzi, the hotel inspector and owner of the Polizzi Collection group of hotels, Mark Driver from Rathfinny, Nick White from Bistrot, Pierre, UK, with 19 restaurants across the country, And as you know, restaurants have got their own problems. Nathanial Hepburn, who you know now, and Andrew Younger from Enterprise Inns. So we'll see you at 11:10. Thank you very much. Welcome back, everybody. It's just about 10 minutes past, so we're bang on time, which is great. At this stage, I would like to introduce Rob Cottrell to you. Rob is currently the Chief Executive of Eastbourne and Lewes Councils. He's been Chief Executive of Eastbourne for 11 years. And in the way of all things, your workload doubles, but your salary doesn't. So he has been Chief Executive of Lewes for 5 years. He has 30 years experience in planning and regeneration. He's worked on huge projects in London and across the Southeast. He and his team have won many awards for what they do and for being innovative and entrepreneurial. And he's also a director sitting on the board of 2 tech companies who are helping East Sussex to improve digitally. So I'm going to hand over to Rob Cottrell now and let him take over, and he'll introduce the panel to you.
Thank you very much, Christina, and good morning, everybody. As we've been hearing, the context of this summit is that the hospitality and retail sectors have taken the brunt of the pandemic so far. And as the visitor economy is so important to Sussex, it's important that we come together to find our way out of what could be a real crisis for our county if we do nothing. Also, it's fast moving. We heard this morning the Minister use the term live announcements. And certainly, as Christina mentioned, when we planned this conference, it was a hybrid. We're going to have delegates in the hall as well as online. With the restrictions, it's all online. And of course, with the exciting news with the vaccines recently, there may be a sense of optimism, which perhaps we can eke out. So to help us navigate these choppy waters, we've got the opportunity to hear from some incredibly experienced and successful business specialists to find out how they're managing the pandemic in their businesses. So for example, this morning we heard how Sussex Modern Partners are working together across different sectors to stimulate business and to attract customers to our area. The panel will also explore ideas to work together and adapt to the new normal in order to survive, revive, and thrive. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to introduce each of our 5 panelists in turn and just ask them to speak for a few minutes to introduce themselves and their businesses. So our first panelist is Alex Polizzi, hotelier and part of the Forte Hospitality Dynasty, television presenter and owner of the Polizzi collection, including the Star Hotel just around the corner in Huddlestone. Alex, over to you.
Hi, I've been rather quiet as the newcomer here, but I have definitely felt the effects, obviously, like we all have, of this recent pandemic. Both of our hotels are closed in the southwest, and it probably isn't the best time to have decided to open a new hotel this year. However, what has been very encouraging is we've had a fantastic year with local tourism. I just very keen to explore how we might be able to hang on to a proportion of those new visitors once the ability to fly is returned to us, because I think people will desperately, as we've said, want to use their vouchers, want to get away, want to explore the world again. And it would be a shame when we've introduced so many new guests to everything that this wonderful country has to offer, if we can't tempt them to use us for, as has been said already, for a little proportion of their holidays.
Thank you very much, Alex. Next, I'm going to move to Nick White. Nick's the restaurateur and chief exec of Bistrot, Pierre UK restaurant group. We have one here in Eastbourne, the Wish Tower, with stunning views of Beachy Head and the coastline. Nick, over to you. Just introduce yourself and your business for a few minutes.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Yes, I'm Nick White. I have the honour of looking after Bistrot Pierre, which is a 26-year-old business founded in Nottingham by 2 entrepreneurs who kind of handed over the reins 2 or 3 years ago to myself. We are very proud of the restaurant in Eastbourne. It was a collaboration with yourself, Rob, and your team, the local council. We came to Eastbourne largely because of the very progressive view of yourselves and your teams to get things done and enable us to co-invest in the restaurant there. We're very proud of it. As I say, it's a fantastic location. Obviously, this last few months has been incredibly tough. Probably, I think as a restaurateur, had more optimism 48 hours ago than we have this morning with the latest announcements regarding the tiers. I'm sure we'll have some questions around that and where Sussex will end up by the end of the week, as well as many other parts of the country. But we've fared reasonably well with our coastal towns. We actually have 5 coastal restaurants, all with great sea views, and they've done very well over the summer. They tend to be in towns where cases of COVID have been relatively low, and the destinations that they are mean that people have sought them out, and we've been very pleased about that. By contrast, our city centres have been devastated, and the 4 or 5 city centre restaurants we've got are taking a very small fraction of what they were.
Nick, thank you very much. A sense of optimism there, but certainly a mixed picture across your portfolio. I'm going to move next to Andrew Younger, a publican and director of one of the largest pub groups in the country, EI. EI in Eastbourne alone owns the buildings the Eagle, Marine, Rainbow, Pilot, Prince Albert, Star, British Queen and Wheatsheaf. So perhaps it could be one of those created tours that Mark was talking about earlier on. Andrew, just over to you briefly to introduce yourself and your business.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I represent Stonegate Pub Company, was Enterprise Inns. We were bought or acquired by Stonegate on the 6th of March. So imagine what happened on the 20th of March, how amusing that was for Stonegate. So it's been really tough. We've all been through a very tough period. We have 4,500 pubs nationally, that's Scotland, Wales and England, but we also have 200 plus in Sussex, of which many have been named by Rob. 2 in particular, we managed to complete some investment schemes during lockdown, which is at the Rainbow in Eastbourne and the Star in Horsham. But it has been a very challenging time, and the announcements yesterday only make it more challenging. But the thing that I've been amazed about, perhaps not surprised, but just amazed at the resilience of our publican partners, because we work with about 700 managed operations, but also about 3,300 entrepreneurs that we work with as publicans. And their resilience and creativity and sheer determination to get through this has been inspiring for us all. So we're not nearly there at all. We're 9 months into this dreadful pandemic. There is light at the end of the tunnel, and I feel that we've got to pull together to be strong enough to get out the other end when staycation will be big. And I know during lockdown, sorry, not during lockdown, but after lockdown, our Southwest business in particular, we're trading above last year's levels. So there is a lot to look forward to. And I just want to thank everyone, all our publicans, all their staff for the fantastic work they've done.
Thank you, and thank you, Andrew. And again, a sense of optimism for next year, but certainly that question is how we as a sector can bridge that gap from where we are now, get through the next few difficult months to take advantage of when the economy will open up again. I'm going to go next to Mark Driver. Mark, we've already heard from you earlier this morning through your excellent presentation. Thank you very much for that. Mark's viticulturist and owner of the largest vineyard in the country, Rathfinny Wine Estate. Mark, I'm going to cheat a little bit here, as we've heard from you already, as well as introducing yourself. I just wanted you to give a perspective. Clearly, your business, by definition, focuses on the long-term development of its business. And of course, in the middle of it, we've had the pandemic. Perhaps just touch on some of that shock to the system in that patient planning and development.
Sorry, I had to remember to unmute. Thank you very much. Like everybody, we've had a really difficult year. 80% of our wine is sold through the on-trade. And clearly, as they closed down in March, we were devastated by that. So we've had to shift a lot of our attention away from the on-trade, which remain largely shut for a large portion of this year to the on trade, the off trade, and so we've had to fast forward a lot of events. And I suppose, Rob, that sort of goes to our answering the question. So, you know, when you establish a vineyard, you don't really establish it for this generation. You normally establish it for the next. So, you know, we're thinking in a sort of 20, 30 year time frame. So it's intergenerational, and this is a difficult time, and we've had a difficult year, but I am a lot more optimistic for next year, because we can see what we've been able to do over the summer. Like a lot of businesses, I'm sure we were very innovative, and we've got incredible staff. So when we were able to reopen in July, instead of having a very small restaurant on site, we started offering picnics, which in turn became incredibly popular with a takeaway food offering as well. And we were serving up to 180 covers a day from our little restaurant on site. So I think that the message from me is that, you know, we have to be innovative. We have to look at other ways in which we can get ourselves through this. We can generate a sufficient revenue to hopefully cover our overheads, as well as looking ahead in terms of working collaboratively to try and amplify what we all have to offer in Sussex, be that accommodation, be that food, be that you know, the wonderful local produce that we have. It's about telling that story and amplifying that each as individuals. So everybody is beholden on us to say, you know, have you visited this? Have you visited that? Have you thought about this? And I think we can all do that a little bit better and probably a little bit wiser. That would be my message.
Thank you very much, Mark, and a very strong message there about that very quick and rapid adaptability necessary to thrive and survive during the changing times. Over to Nathanial next. Nathanial Hepburn, who we heard from, museum curator, chief executive of the Charleston Trust, and also leader of the Sussex Modern Movement. Nathanial, we heard from you earlier on, and I'm sure you'll forgive me for reminding people that Charleston is a charitable trust. And just leading into the pandemic, you were on the back of the biggest capital investment in the institution's history, which you've been supporting and building up. Then, of course, the pandemic hit. Perhaps you can just touch on how that affected you and where you are at the moment.
Yeah, so yeah, Charleston is a charity that's there to preserve and open to the public the extraordinary house that was the home of the artists Duncan Grant and Vanessa Bell. We, about a decade ago, started planning to restore two neighbouring buildings, historic barns, to turn one into auditorium space to do concerts and festivals and talks and weddings and craft fairs, and to open a cafe and to build a gallery space so we can have temporary exhibitions. And it was all part of a kind of pivot in the organisation, which we could probably talk a bit more about in terms of how, as organisations, we're adapting. But it was about moving away from the reliance on the house, which is a very fragile structure, to and away from just relying on tourist audiences to actually being a cultural centre for kind of the community, for people from Newhaven, Eastbourne, Lewis, as a place to come to for, as I say, talks and concerts and cultural programmes all year round. So we would just open that at the end of 2018. So the pandemic and the closure of the site cut all of our income streams. So we don't receive ongoing revenue funding, we don't receive ongoing Arts Council funding. We're solely reliant on our visitors. And after a decade of investment into that building, the coffers were dry, and shutting the doors means no income at all. So it was very genuine, the thanks to the Minister for Furlough and things like that, without which Charleston would have closed permanently. We've been fundraising. It's always kind of really humbling to see people from around the world putting what small amounts of money they can give into saving cultural organisations, because they're there for everyone. They're part of our infrastructure. They're what we all need, and we'll all need coming out of this. so we've been closed this year, but actually behind the scenes also pivoting the organisation and kind of working to accelerate all of those plans to be that cultural centre for the community. So when we reopen next year, and we can now reopen next year, I think we'll be a very different organisation for, as I say, residents as well as tourists coming into the area.
Thank you very much, Nathaniel, and that word again, pivot, which may be a theme of the conversation. Alex, perhaps I can go back to you. Your investment in the Star is very exciting. It's one of the few examples in investment in the UK hotel sector over the past 12 months. What are your expectations for 2021? And just to pick on the theme that you raised, often hospitality, different parts of the sectors are in competition with each other. How can we sort of foster collaboration so the fantastic ecosystem that we have in Sussex, for example, we tend to focus on the big resorts, but the richness of the Sussex offer is small villages like Alfriston and the excellence of hotels and facilities that they have like yours. How can we foster that collaboration in your view?
Well, all I know is how we've done it in Cornwall, and so I'm basing myself on that. When we took over, when we bought Hotel Tresanton in Cornwall, which is 22 years ago, Cornwall was incredibly unfashionable. And it's hard to remember now that it has had such a success over the last 20 years. But it was considered a very much bucket and spade location, and only a certain kind of demographic of customer went there. And I think one of the reasons that we've managed to be successful is we've embraced them, as well as trying to bring in a slightly more well-heeled visitor. And along with that has come many more attractions that kind of visitor would like to visit, but without removing the kind of amazing options for everybody and for everything. And so I think it is possible to achieve the kind of success that embraces every kind of tourist, and the large resorts and the small resorts. And for example, just as a small example, there's a hotel called Bistrot and Steps, which is a child-friendly hotel, which has a very different demographic from the one that I have at Tresanton. However, we very often have people go with their children for a few days there and then leave the children with the grandparents and then come and spend a couple of days at Tresanton or something of that ilk. We embrace all the walkers, all the trails. There's a huge diversity of food. I think I'm very keen, and Cornwall has taught me very well not to be too snobbish about what the county has to offer, because the truth is everyone likes a treat and everyone likes fish and chips on the pier. And you ought to be able to embrace customers who like both ends of that.
Well, thank you, Alex. I mean, that diversity and embracing different audiences is key to any successful business. And I guess it links to a question for Andrew, perhaps. Andrew, I mean, your pubs have a dual role. Obviously, tourists visit them, but also they're often considered the heart of their respective communities as well. So in terms of the relaxations, getting through the next few months as well, how do you balance those two different perhaps customers of yours and in order to rebuild your business?
Yeah, you're absolutely right that all of our pubs have vital roles to play in their communities. Since the beginning of lockdown back in March, the amount of money raised for charities has obviously dropped through the floor, and that's been felt everywhere, from guide dogs for the blind to hospices and just to local support for local people. And every single pub that I go to has some sort of collection tin or some sort of activity that's going on to connect their communities. And that's one of the main things we've lost. Going forward, I think the communities are going to be much more important to our pubs maybe than they have been already. I know many of our publicans have provided free meals for NHS staff, and that's fantastic, but also have looked after the more fragile or at-risk members of their community by delivering food and even drink to in the streets, etc. So it is very important. I think the main thing we've been focusing on is just trying to keep our businesses alive and to keep them going and to keep them to get through. And I know that that in itself will help communities survive going forward. I think our fear was that many businesses could go to the wall, and therefore there'd be a massive hole for everyone, including the staff who work in those pubs and obviously those families who rely on all the businesses, and also as a place to go to have a different experience. Because as you know, with our pubs, we'll have what you might call a corner boozer, and we'll have a gastro pub. And as Alex says, you know, some of them are in the same street potentially or in the same area. So there's a wide diversity. So our main focus is on keeping all of our businesses going through this pandemic and trying to get them through to March, April, May and beyond. And we're very positive about that, but it's going to be very tough. I have to be honest, it's going to be very tough.
Thank you, Andrew, and some great examples there. As you say, it's going to be very tough, but I think you're coming out with the restrictions. One of the issues you touched on there was about values and what you were doing to key workers and so on in terms of those free meals you mentioned. So I think people will remember that in the coming months and years and respect businesses that have supported those sorts of initiatives. But it will remain challenging. And I'm going to go to Nick next, Nick White. Nick, as you say, we work together on, I'm going to use the host privilege and call it your flagship restaurant in your group on Eastbourne Seafront. And you recruited your staff, your new teams, mobilized, had a fantastic start. And all of a sudden then we had lockdown. You've sort of touched on how we dealt with that, but in look at the Q&A session, one of the most frequent questions about how businesses will deal with the tiers that are coming in from next week. And Nick, have you had one or two requests from government on how to make that transition as easy as possible for businesses? What would you be asking for?
That's a great question. I think the first thing is as much notice as possible. Reopening a business is very difficult. Closing a business down is very difficult. So this kind of stop-start approach to lockdown has been very difficult. We'd almost rather have had a longer lockdown and got it over and done with than the prospect of things changing. I think a good example would be how it's been handled in Wales. The communication was significantly better, I think, than it has been. The degree of certainty around what's happening and the communication of the rules, and also the way that the rules have been structured such that you can have household mixing less than before, and the regulations were toughened. So it's pre-bookings, there's a predefined period of time that you can stay in a restaurant. But it has meant that we've been able to open our two Welsh restaurants quickly and successfully, and I'm very encouraged about the performance and how that will continue. I'm much less positive about the prospects in restaurants we have in the Northwest, which we don't know whether they'll be able to open next week. So I think that kind of clarity, and it does appear to me that we're out of lockdown and going back into lockdown, just with a different name as far as restaurants are concerned. So I think I really struggle to understand how you can allow 4,000 people into a football stadium, but not 4 people into a pub. And having somebody explain that would be quite a useful thing. But what we will do is, this is about us being nimble and agile and trying to do the best that we can in each location that we are in. We're very fortunate in the Eastbourne location that we've kept the majority of our staff. We've always had a bit of a seasonal downturn as we've come out of the summer, but being agile and changing your business, I think, is a really important thing.
Thank you, Nick. Very strong messages there about as much advance notice as possible, and certainly some certainty there. Alex, perhaps I can put the same question to you, if that's okay.
Oh gosh, what do I have to add? I think that was very succinct. I think I'm incredibly nervous going forward, to tell you the truth. We were supposed to open the Star at Christmas, and we decided not to, because the uncertainty around what we were going to be able to do and not was so extreme. How do you train new staff under these circumstances? How do you open your doors and take on more people onto the payroll without knowing how long, how long you'll actually be able to keep them? I think I feel very fortunate, like Nick, that in the Southwest, we've been, we've had a very low incidence. And so we've been incredibly lucky in the fact that we've had steady visitor numbers. And also we've got a core team after many years of having the hotels open. What we've done is that core team has worked itself into the ground, really, because we've just not taken on any new staff surrounding the uncertainty. I think it's much more difficult for me to work out how I'm going to manage a new hotel opening. And that's why we've kept delaying it, because, the reality is, I can't afford, with the investment that we've made, for this to fall flat on its face. Like everyone else, we had no income all those months. And then November, that looked as if it was going to be an unusually good November for us, got snatched away. And so, I think like everybody, I'm not, no one's immune from this. We're all really struggling. And I have more questions than I have answers. Like Nick, I really don't understand why hospitality is considered to be the bad guy here. I still don't understand why there can be 30 people for a funeral, 15 people for a wedding, and what the difference is between that and any other gathering. So I think, there's a lot of lack of clarity, and that's something that I've struggled with. And that my managers have struggled with throughout this. We've had to be reactive. And so you continue game planning, but you game plan for 4 different scenarios, which is very tiring. And it's quite a waste of time as well, frankly.
Thanks, Alex. That was very powerful in terms of we're all working with exhausted colleagues, aren't we, that have been supporting our organisations and businesses sternly in the past few months. And on top of that, it's the emotional impact, the optimism, building up for something, only for things to change almost overnight, and how we deal with that. Mark, perhaps on the back of that, in terms of the changes over the next few months, how is some of that uncertainty impacting your ability to plan for next year?
Well, I think the thing that resonated with me was November being snatched away. So like a lot of businesses, because the summer had been truncated, and a lot more people were looking for some sort of domestic staycation, holiday of sorts, we were fully booked throughout the month of November. So to have that snatched, as Alex correctly put it, away from us has significantly affected our business. As everybody knows, the desert really is January and February, and those 2 months are normally a good 50% quieter than the third quarter. So they're very, very quiet months indeed, and we've got to face that. It's going to be very uncertain. It's going to be very difficult, and we're doing our best to try and to change our offer as much as we can on the site. So we have a small hotel accommodation. We have 10 bed hotel, and we have a restaurant, and we have a tasting room and cellar door. And it's a question of trying to find opportunities to attract visitors to the estate, to give them an excuse to come up and visit. So, we're highlighting things like our trail. So we opened up a permissive path around the estate to try and encourage people to come and walk, exercise, do all these great things, as well as hopefully visiting the cellar door and perhaps buying some wine at the same time. So I think it's trying to be, again, innovative, adapting your offer throughout this quiet period.
Thank you, Mark. And Nathaniel, you've adapted your offer on the back of your capital investment, for example, opening longer throughout the year. Obviously, only to have that restrictions affect that business plan. And we talked about trails. Mark, you talked about curated trails earlier on. Perhaps moving to a more sort of urban context on the back of a couple of questions we've received about urban art and how can initiatives, cultural initiatives, perhaps not traditional ones, such as urban art, how can we use those to feed into next year and provide an additional narrative and compelling reasons for people to come to East Sussex?
Yeah, well, one of the reasons that Charleston is pivoting is traditionally it's been £15–16 to get around the house, and that doesn't attract the diversity of audiences that we want to attract. But actually, most of the cultural organisations in the country are free to enter. Art Fund Museum of the Year Towner is free to get into. Delaware Pavilion is free to get into. You can walk off the seafront into those organisations and then pop back to the seafront to have your fish and chips. You know, I think what we need to understand or what we need to build is all of those different routes for visitors to understand what Sussex has to offer. So picking up lots of the comments there about kind of exclusivity, I think that that's a potential challenge that we need to look at, but we need to look at also how Sussex looks different from every other county. And lots of other counties have been doing this for years. They're really, really good at telling the story. I talked about Visit Kent and those stories. Culture is a huge part of the story that we can offer, whether that's street art or cultural commissions in the landscape, or just amazing exhibitions that bring people into the organisations, extraordinary artists that attract kind of diverse audiences. So, you know, there's a huge amount of that going on, and lots of exhibitions that will be opening next spring, as well as England's Creative Coast, which is commissioning along the landscape. So there's lots of that happening. And I think that most of the cultural organisations that we work with in the region are doing a huge amount of work to not be exclusive organisations, but actually to attract everybody that wants to come into a town, wants to come into a city, that there's something to offer for them there as well.
Thank you very much, Nathaniel. And I guess intrinsic to what you were saying there is that issue of collaboration. And I guess one of the things that the pandemic is coming across very strongly from all the panelists is that collaboration is really one of the keys to be able to survive in future, because the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Now, a joint offer across East Sussex is really, really well beating when you look at the huge and small institutions that we have to offer. Another question that's coming, so I'm going to put this to Andrew first, actually. The concept of workcations, which is a new one to me. And how can the hospitality link with co-working spaces to have that link with people who have a more flexible work style, and given the context and the advantages that Sussex has in terms of its attractiveness as landscape and so on?
Yeah, it's a very good question, actually, because we have a lot of pubs which have a certain amount of spare space, which, whether it's upstairs or downstairs, that has been developed in certain parts to enable hot desking or workspacing where people can come in and use their laptops, have coffees, and this can extend the trading time for pubs and cafes, etc., through the day. I think it's very important. I think one of the, I had 4 things that I'd written down which were very important going forward. One of them is about outside areas that often in the past our sort of pub gardens or gardens generally had been a little bit shabby, but now all of us are spending a lot of time investing in how to make our outside areas better for not just work visits but also for tourists when they do come back, but local people who feel safer outside than possibly inside. We've also got to attract younger customers to what you might call the traditional pub. A lot of our traditional pubs have relied on what you might call a slightly older generation coming and enjoying their experience, but getting younger people in who come out of Pret-a-Manger, come out of Costa, and maybe come into pubs and hotels to have their coffee experience is very important to us. We have to have safe and clean environments. We always should have had and always should have safe and clean environments, but this virus has shown that actually that's one of the most important aspects of feedback from our customers, is having safe and clean environments. And also the use of apps and online booking to reserve space, to have meetings, or reserve space to have family and friends when we're allowed to. So there are a number of things that we probably haven't focused on heavily enough in the past about our venues that we do need to now, and certainly office space, hot desking, being able to come and have interviews is very important. for us going forward.
Thank you, Andrew. Some very clear strategies there. Nick, can I sort of go over to you next, from a slightly different perspective from the restaurant sector?
Yeah, well, I think in terms of how we've adapted, I think the number one thing that was on our minds was giving people reassurance around safety, so that people could come into our restaurants and know that they were in a safe space. So we've heard mentioned earlier on about kind of air exchange, so making sure you've got ventilation, but much more than that. We've obviously taken a lot of covers out of restaurants. We've invested a ton of money in screens to separate various areas, and trying to do so without making our restaurants look like a Perspex shop, and that's been quite challenging. But we've also invested in a lot in the outside areas. I would be a lot of overlap with what's been said by Andrew there, making sure. So in Eastbourne, for example, we've invested in a pod that sits overlooking the sea, and we're about to put a second and third one in there. So that provides a different and slightly innovative dining experience. So I think really this is around, number one is making sure that the locations are fit for purpose, so are safe, and we can convey that message. But then making sure that we are nimble with the way we invest in the business is to give us the broadest church of people that want to come and visit them. Outside areas again is something which we're good at in the summer, but that generally means sticking an umbrella up, and that's fine, and it's just not enough now. We've had quite an extensive, we've called it winterization of the outside areas, so making sure that people can sit as not necessarily 12 months around. You'd have to have some pretty big structure to stop the wind on the Eastbourne seafront on a cold January night, but as much as we can to make the outside areas hospitable and an attraction, and doing something a little bit different that creates a different experience. And the pods we've put in, we've had people book them for engagements, for proposals. We've had people book them for a posh afternoon tea, right the way through to just coming for lunch. So that's been quite a learning curve for us as to how we just utilize the space. And then particularly in Eastbourne, we have an outside serving area. We have the Airstream, which used to sit on the grass, and that's been fantastic. I think last Sunday we served 400 cups of coffee, to people who wanted to take away a cup of coffee while they were walking the dog or having a walk on the beach. So just really been as adaptable with everything as we can is the name of the game, really.
Thank you, Nick. And yes, your comments there about businesses that have got a reputation for safety, for cleanliness, it's going to be vital in future. But also that perception of safety and cleanliness is going to be a key driver of whether customers cross that threshold. And whereas, in your restaurant in Eastbourne, you have luxury of space to be flexible. Alex, I'm going to go to you next, but in that context, you've got a very difficult job of balancing that need to demonstrate safety, being COVID secure, but also maintaining the character of your hotel, some of which were historic. Is that a tricky job for you?
It's a very tricky job, and it's a tightrope. I mean, that's why I'm cross in a way that there's so much lack of clarity. Because, for example, over Christmas, are our restaurants allowed to have 6 people eating together? Are they not? Is it only family groups? Is it 3 or 4? All of this is a bit unknown. With the Star, we've done something quite good in that we've created an outdoor space. It never traditionally had an outdoor space. It was very much a winter pub. It didn't have a garden, and so it really suffered in the summer months. And we've been allowed to bring down a large bit of building in the middle of the Star, which housed the old loo block and toilet block and the office and things like that. And now we've got an internal courtyard, and that will make my life going forward a lot easier. Like everyone else in all our establishments, the safety of our customers has been completely paramount. And I'm very, I don't think that we didn't want to be the cause of anyone being contaminated by anyone else. And so, of course, we adopted masks and visors much before, as soon as we went back to work, much before the government advice was to do so. And I think that will be an issue going forward. The thing is, it's a difficult balance, isn't it? Trying to make sure that you've got enough customers to make their money come in and keep the staff safe and our customers safe. So yes, it's a tightrope I'm constantly walking.
This goes to demonstrate the bandwidth needed, isn't it, to deal with all these respective challenges simultaneously. Just talk about the future. I've got a note from Christina here, actually. I think she wants to come in a moment to talk about a kickstart. Is that right, Christina?
Sorry, I was just bringing some more questions into you. Yeah, just to let everybody know what's happening with Kickstart. Kickstart is a program that you will no doubt have heard about, but has gone a bit quiet lately. Kickstart is the idea that you can employ someone, a young person who's on universal credit for 6 months completely free of charge, and you also get a contribution towards training that person. The situation is, if you're worried that you haven't heard anything, you have to apply through a gateway. Each gateway has to put through parcels of 30 job applications or job placements. As a chamber at Eastbourne Chamber, we have been doing that for the county. So we have placements from Lewis and other parts of East Sussex. And we have put them through to the government. But the delay is caused because rather than putting them through the job centres, the government is putting them through one central point. So one central company are deciding on all the placements, whether they approve them or not. And that has slowed the whole thing down. Then you throw lockdown into that, and a lot of the jobs that we put through are for hospitality support. And of course, hospitality is in lockdown at the moment. So that has slowed it down, but we are expecting to be able to come back to people and say, yes, you can recruit. We were hoping to be able to do that in November. It's clear that's not going to be happening now, but we are pushing the government to let us start the programme as soon as possible. Having said that, we've already put through 60 job placements. If you are thinking of taking on a Kickstart young person and you want to put it through a gateway, let us know. If you're a large company, obviously you could probably put through 30 people, job placements yourself. If not, just come to us and we'll do it for you. So just a quick update on that.
Thank you, Christina. And I guess that goes to, we've got tight resources between us and looking at priorities. So I'm going to ask the panelists a simple question that's come in from in our Q&A session. With budgets limited, where should businesses focus their spend? Andrew, can I go to you first on that one?
Yeah, I may have revealed some of the answer already, but I'll try something different. I think certainly you're right. We've had to cut back on most expenditure. We've obviously had to cut staff with redundancies as well. So it's been a very difficult time, but certainly continue the training programs for our staff, look after your staff, look after your pub in our case, and look after your company in that order really, which is to make sure that we look after those who are running and operating our pubs first. So spruce up the place, keep it fresh. And as I said before, embrace hygiene and safety measures, but also have confidence in what we've been doing. Have confidence in our ability to deliver really good food and drink experiences when we can. I think as Alex has mentioned and Nick has mentioned as well, we're not really coming out of restrictions. We're going into restrictions probably. It depends where we all end up, whether we're tier 3 or tier 2, but there's not a hell of a lot of difference between the two. So again, resilience and fortitude is going to be very important. But I think focusing on looking after your staff, because they're going to be very important to us when we do get back to normal, and also just keeping resilient and keeping tight as we go through.
Thank you, Andrew. Absolutely, none of us would be where we are at the moment without the support of staff and valued colleagues. Over to Mark now. So with limited budgets, where are you going to focus your spend in the immediate future?
A really good question. We're putting wine down, so that's our main expenditure. It's putting wine into the cellar, which gets sold in about 4 years' time. But I would amplify what Andrew's just said. I think it's about looking after your staff, making sure that they're happy, that they're the people who are the customer facing. And if they greet the customer with a nice big smile on their face, then hopefully you'll have very happy customers. And that's what we want. We want happy customers. We want people who are going to come back time and time again because they've had a really good experience in our establishments. So that's what I would encourage. Look after your staff, make sure they're happy, that they feel safe, they feel comfortable, that they've got all the resources that they need to feel safe and make our customers safe and want to come back. So happy customers, happy staff, happy customers.
Thank you, Mark. Nathanial, a slightly different context for you, and obviously very, very limited resources. And as Mark and Andrew have said, we need to make sure our staff and colleagues are supported. In terms of what you're focusing on in terms of expenditure to launch your season next year, can you just sort of give us a few tips on that?
Yeah, sort of chuckling at Chris has put a comment in the Q&A saying, what do you do if you haven't got any staff? And I'm certainly feeling the pain of having reduced down to an absolute skeletal staff team. But we're investing in building digital audiences. We've worked all the way through lockdown to build our audiences who engage with us through social media and through digital programs as well. And next year we're investing in program. We have to have exciting things, and that's kind of picking up on some other panelists' view of kind of confidence that we will come out of this, and that there are great opportunities there. There will be a strong domestic tourism market. The minister talked about it, but talked about the fact we've got to work for it. I think we're all seeing the kind of glimmer of a younger, more diverse audience base coming down from London. There have been through this summer, a very different sort of audience starting to visit our towns. There's a real opportunity there, but we've got to deliver programs. So we're spending on social media, marketing, and extraordinary programs. So Charleston Festival will be back next year, hopefully looking a little bit different, but bringing exciting, rare opportunities to see extraordinary authors, historians, artists, makers, politicians, whatever. So making sure that there's a reason to come to Charleston and to Sussex.
Thank you, Nathanial. Yes, investing to make sure that pipeline is there for next year. And Alex, in terms of at the moment, where are you focusing your spend in the immediate term?
Oh my gosh, I mean, all I can tell you is I'm sure anyone here will sympathise who's done a new project, and all I can say is my budget has been blown out of the water. I mean, budget, what budget? Every time I turn around, there's, more money needs to be found somewhere. We've borrowed up to the hilt. And I think we've borrowed up to the hilt because we have confidence intrinsically in our product and in what we have to offer people. We always look after our staff, and we've tried very hard to look after our guests. I think one of the ways that we've got through this period, we're lucky because obviously we offer accommodation, is by encouraging people to keep their deposits with us, to try and spend, to keep that money in our bank account rather than sending it back to anybody. We've had a lot of support in that regard because we have a kind of loyal client base. And then something else we're spending on much more than I have before is Wi-Fi, is connectivity. I think, which goes back to the staycation thing, which goes back to working from home thing. Really, if you want people to come and to feel like they can work from your establishment, you need to make sure that you have really first class connectivity. And we've been slightly behind the curve in that, I think, possibly because I'm an old bird, and it's taken me a while to kind of get to terms with it. But certainly in the Star, it will be like that. And so any spare penny I spent on technology, if I'm honest.
Thank you. Thank you very much. A very clear and direct answer. Nick, I'm going to go to you next. And in a moment, I'll ask Caroline Ansell, Eastbourne's MP, to come in after you. But Nick, in terms of immediate focus and immediate spend, can you just give us some comments on that from a Bistrot Pierre point of view?
Yeah, a lot of the points have already been made around, I mentioned safety before, but we've also made sure we've invested in core products. So we certainly haven't skimped on quality, made sure we're investing in food and in service and in team. But I think maybe a couple of things just to add that haven't been mentioned. We're quite famous for Christmas decorations in Bistrot Pierre. We generally have a huge tree in every restaurant, and we spend quite a bit of money on it. So it's a bit of a local thing. And we took a decision a month ago saying, even if Christmas is shortened this year more than ever, people I'm sure would like to go out to a restaurant and see it dressed nicely for Christmas. So we've invested quite a lot of money, as we normally would. We've invested the normal amount in focusing on Christmas and Christmas decorations. So that's been one area. Sprucing up restaurants, I think, has probably already been covered. The other area was we took a decision to invest some back in our core customers, and so we extended the Eat Out to Help Out in September and in October, and that was about £500,000 worth of discount we gave. And measuring that's quite tricky, but it felt like the right thing to do, and we got a lot of appreciation from our core users, our core customers, particularly those in our kind of loyalty program, saying they were really grateful that we'd extended that across that period of time. So that was quite a conscious but quite significant investment, and I'm glad we did that.
Thank you, Nick. Over to Caroline now. Caroline, you've heard from a bunch of very, very optimistic people, but also with worry over the next few months. Are there any comments you want to make before I put final questions to the panel?
Well, only that this has been a really excellent session for bringing forward the concerns, but as you say, also the grounds for hope and optimism. I just put in the chat box, actually, I was absolutely stunned to hear that 68% of our visitors stay for 4 hours. I mean, that speaks to me of huge untapped opportunities. And actually that notion around the Sussex story, the marvelous thing about that, people might not know who we are, but we have a story to tell. And so there again, just opportunities ahead. This time, though, is undeniably challenging. And of course, the government has and still is very much prioritising public health. And so with my colleagues today, we're looking at hospitalisations, we're looking at intensive care beds, and of course aren't we looking to the horizon this week to understand what tier we might emerge to. So I am just so very grateful to everybody for their incredible hard work, because I very much recognise this is the engine for our county. This is how we provide those health services, how we provide education, and very many of you, of course, provide this youngest generation with their very first opportunities in employment. So I recognise everything that you're doing, how hard it is, and with my MP colleagues, we will lobby on we will continue to lobby on your behalf. It was not for nothing that Nigel said that there isn't a moment that goes by that we are not flying the flag for hospitality and flying the flag for East Sussex and that wider Sussex story, as we've already heard. I think one of the points I wanted to make was that notion of string of pearls, that notion of joining all the incredibly wonderful places and opportunities and experiences. And my feeling very much is around transport and how transport needs to power that and not prevent and not provide barriers to that. And obviously we are a county that is not currently blessed with really strong transport corridors. So how we unlock this notion of this sort of curated experience and this moving from one town, one centre to another, I think is going to be really key, and how it could add actually to the visitor experience. Somebody very inspiring, avant-garde, talked to me about water taxis. How do we use our sort of coastal locations to our advantage? Rickshaws, how do we build in hot air ballooning? I don't know, but how do we build in sort of new transport connectivity to make sure that our county operates as this really beautiful jewel that we all know it is, because we have a huge opportunity now with this staycation market. Because the sorry truth is, we were wrestling with many of these challenges in hospitality before the pandemic. That hauntingly seasonal nature to the sector, how we sort of really not flatten that out, but raised up those darker spots through the year, which is why innovations such as those outside pods are so critical going forward, that we're building in that resilience and that more 365 experience. So I feel suitably inspired to go forward and to lobby again, very mindful of the concerns that you brought forward today, but also really energized by some of the good work that's already happening and those really strong partnerships. So I've really enjoyed the experience, and obviously I'll look forward to picking up again with some of those questions, and we can continue the conversation. But clearly this is a very big week, and we will know more and more detail to follow.
Thank you, Caroline. And a challenge there in transport, which could be a topic for a whole summit in itself. Yep. So we could pursue that one at the moment. Hugh, thank you very much for rejoining. You've probably picked up there that sense of optimism and resilience, but also trepidation for the next few months. Any thoughts, brief thoughts you just want to leave the panel with?
Look, I don't want to speak because I've been off the call for the last hour, and I think that's actually quite rude on my part if I just do an MP all over the place with my views. I'm sorry I wasn't there to listen for the last hour, but I chair the Transport Select Committee, Rob, so in much as transport is the challenge, and hopefully the last hour was well used on matters that consist throughout all. But I just want to throw my weight behind it. I've spoken with Mark, for example, and I think what is being done to link up the sort of the tourism trail, that goes from culture, it goes to visitor experience, investment that Alex and others are bringing into East Sussex is incredibly exciting. And the reality, as much as I'm lobbying for the aviation industry and will continue to do so as my role as Transport Select Committee, more people are going to stay in this country for their holidays, and that gives us a massive opportunity. And whilst we can try and get money from government, we all know that sometimes it's the entrepreneurs that actually drive the innovation and ideas rather than government. So I want to support private in industry and investment in driving forward our visitor numbers. And I'll leave it at that. And thank you for having us as well. It's been where I've been here. It's been a brilliant conference, and you're all fantastic ambassadors.
Thank you very much, Hugh. One final question to each of the panel members. Very brief answer, please, to a very simple question. In terms of what, the next few months, what is your top tip for surviving the next few months? Alex, I'm going to ask you that one first.
Gosh, I hoped you weren't going to come to me first. I'm madly thinking on my feet here. The top tips are, I suppose, just staying ahead of the government advice, trying to stay on top of it. And I think the other thing is just, again, what we said around staff. This is always a rather terrifying period that we're going into, a rather innovating period, and looking after your core team and just making sure that you can stick it for the long term, because I think this is not something that is going to disappear over the next 4 or 5 months. I think we've got a long old haul ahead.
Yeah, quite right. Nathanial, your top tip for surviving the next few months?
I think I'd echo that. It's been a tiring year for anyone who's been leading an organisation or working, or for all of us, to be honest. So I think there's a degree of needing to maintain that kind of mental health and recovery during this period, because we're going to need it for next year. We're going to need to keep our eye on the long game, on what we want to deliver, and be ambitious for it. And you can't be ambitious if you're exhausted.
Thanks, Nathanial. Andrew, over to you next.
Yeah, one thing I've learnt for the last 9 months is how working together in the sector has been much stronger than it probably historically has been. Certainly with UK hospitality, we've had a much stronger word or voice within government, which obviously has had some, but not all, impact, as we know. But certainly certainly in the East Sussex area, need to work together. Pubs, hotels, museums, visitor attractions, vineyards. We've all got to support each other by making sure that we know what great visitor attractions, what great venues, what great pubs we've got to go to. And finally, it's just resilience. We are 9 months in, and we look back at all that we've achieved and how exhausting and stressful it's been. But we must recognize how brilliant we are in terms of our teams, in terms of surviving where we've got to. So have confidence, but work together. That's the main thing.
Thank you. Nick, can I go over to you next?
Yeah, I think there are 2 words which spring to mind. One is communication and the other one is agility. And I think we need to be great at communicating with our teams and with our customers. The information coming to us is a bit thin, so we've got to do a great job of trying to reassure the people that we supply a living to. And we've got to be agile in the way that we respond to the challenges. You know, last week I was starting to think about a January lockdown. Who knows, that might still come, but now we've got a different challenge. So being agile and thinking very quickly. But I think I hear that message that comes out a lot around, you know, kind of the government focusing on health, and I think we all in the sector get that. And I think as a sector, we've come together, as has been mentioned by Andrew, incredibly well. And I think what we as a collective sector really need to survive is, we're not really looking for any special treatment. We just don't want to be penalised, and we don't want to be the scapegoat. And you know, just look at any of the data. This is not a problem being created in hospitality. So don't create a problem for hospitality. Let what is a huge sector with massive employment, a sector that, you know, on a percentage of revenue taken pays more tax than pretty much any other sector when you take direct and indirect taxation. Let us bounce back. Let us be creative. Let us be innovative, and help us to keep people in jobs.
Thanks, Nick. That's a great message. The taxes that the sector creates is going to be a platform for the country recovering across the piece. And Mark, I'm going to put the same question to you, but I've been asked to ask you a supplementary special question as well, which is, in hindsight, are you happy you left hedge fund management?
That's cruel. Well, I didn't really. I just look after different hedges now. They're called vines. So, no, I'm delighted. I must say I've never worked so hard as I am doing, and I'm sure most of us are doing at the moment. And I probably, like everybody else, have found the last, particularly the last month, incredibly stressful and very challenging. So I would just encourage everyone to really think about local, you know, buy local, support local, you know, support your local establishments, support your local producers of food, wine, go and visit your local arts organizations. Let's, you know, really get out there, because when things reopen, we need people to come and visit. We need people to start spending some of that money, which hopefully people have saved because they haven't been able to go away on holiday, or they haven't been able to spend it, as my daughter seems to have managed to save money, which was rather remarkable for her, but by not going out. So, you know, we need to encourage people to get out and support their local establishments and buy local and support local.
Mark, thank you. That's a great message there. You know, Sussex Modern is trying to attract people from across the globe here, but we need the bedrock of the local people coming to our facilities to keep us going, especially in the short term. Can I sort of echo the MP's thanks to all the panelists this morning? Some key messages have come through about collaboration, about certainty from government, about how we're all exhausted, and about our thanks to the staff. But I think one of the main things that has come through to me is that we've got 5 sector and business leaders here. You've been very clear about the challenges, but that sense of optimism and resilience, I think, will give confidence to everybody within this summit and beyond, that whatever the short-term challenges that we face, there are opportunities for the future. So thank you all for bringing this session to life. At that point, I'll pass over to Christina and Rupert.
Thank you very much, Rob. Can I just thank you on behalf of everybody for hosting that Q&A. We have tried to get as many questions in as possible, but we will be passing the questions and the chat through to the MPs and the Minister for Tourism, and we will be taking it forward. So I'd like to invite Rupert Clubb to speak now. He's going to wrap up the conference. But to give you some background, Rupert is an engineer by trade, but also an excellent communicator. He is the most senior director, I believe, at East Sussex County Council. He's responsible for communities, economy and transport. So no mean feat, Rupert, but if I can introduce you now to give us your thoughts on what you've heard today.
Well, thank you, Christina. I think, well, excellent communicator. We'll see how this goes, because summarising this session is quite tricky, I have to say. Loads and loads of stuff there. I thought the cover of American Vogue was fantastic. Oh, for 1 minute, if I squinted, I thought it could have been Hugh Merriman standing on the Seven Sisters and not Harry Styles. I think one of the things I have to do is pay tribute to the sector. I mean, absolutely fantastic. Your resilience, your innovation, and dogged determination to make the best of what has been, you know, quite frankly, a horrendous 8 or 9 months has been somewhat amazing. And every time I talk to you or you know, come in contact with representatives from the hospitality or culture or tourism sector, absolutely astounds me. And I think, you know, reflecting on the year, what a 8 months. I mean, let alone, you know, the business and commercial implications of the last 8 to 9 months, but also the personal, you know, all the stories that we've told this morning, I'm sure are replicated in triplicate when you start to think of some of the personal implications as well. So I take my hat off to the sector. It was great actually that Nigel was able to join us this morning, and it was good to see that the Minister has a good knowledge of Sussex. You know, he's been here, he's visited Charleston, and in fact, the leader of East Sussex County Council was fortunate enough to join Nathanial when Nigel visited. So that's a fantastic starting point for us in terms of keeping the profile up, keeping the lobbying up. And I think, you know, I took heart that he remains optimistic for next year. And I suppose, you know, that tourism recovery plan that the Minister talked about is key for us. And as he said, you know, working through your industry bodies to ensure that your voices are heard is absolutely crucial. He did touch on the winter plan, which was published, I think it was yesterday. And those of you that haven't had an opportunity to glance at that, it's worth having a look. I mean, I realise there are still further announcements to come, not least around the tier system. And like you, like me, you know, we're all waiting with bated breath to understand what that might mean for Sussex. But in the meantime, there is that winter plan that gives you some sense of the government's direction. I think as we went on through this morning, listening to Nathanial and Mark and talk about, quite frankly, the importance of a good story. And Nathanial, I think, highlighted that quite well. And you put up a couple of slides around the multiple brands within Sussex. And I think the point that you made, and made well, was Sussex's host. So many good cultural organisations, venues, you know, that link, that arts, wine, landscape. And as Mark mentioned, you know, it drives the column inches. And that invitation for us and the people that we know to help join the dots and curate our own experience, I think is a great example of what Sussex Modern has achieved. I think the challenge is to make sure that that is as inclusive as possible and it appeals to the wide range. It doesn't have to be something that some might consider to be beyond people. And it was interesting looking at some aspects on the chat. You know, we're as much Pontins as we are Glyndebourne, and we have to strike that balance for our visitor economy. It means lots of different things to lots of different people. I think as Christina went on, I mean, she gave you some fantastic tips on how you can get support and advice through the Let's Do Business group and ACES. And I think, you know, without reiterating what Christina mentioned, support is available to you as businesses, as organisations, to help you navigate the next few months. So do take advantage of that. And I know, I mean, Christina is undoubtedly one step ahead and has already, I'm sure, got those links for you on the on some sort of summary coming out at the end. In terms of the expert panel, I really like Alex's point about how do we hang on to that domestic and local market that came about during that brief respite during the summer. You know, there's an opportunity, isn't there, to figure out how best we capture the imagination of those people who enjoyed the venues and experiences that Sussex had to offer. I think that local market, and Mark's point towards the end there about, you know, supporting local businesses, buying local. I mean, certainly, you know, one thing that COVID has taught me, or certainly, well, it hasn't taught me, to be fair, it was there already, but, you know, that ability to use local providers. And I think the value that people now place on the environment around them, you know, when you're, think back to April, when you're only allowed out for an hour a day to get some exercise, the importance of the local place becomes really, really vital for communities. So Alex's point about how do you capture that going forward, I think is key, because it's such a huge slice of the market. I mean, I think Nick was telling us how, you know, one of the reasons he came here was because of that sort of collective progressive view. And I suppose, you know, the challenges for us going forward is maintaining that progressive view, exploiting the opportunities, exploiting the lobbying opportunities that come towards us, so that we can make it that attractive place to invest, not just from a culture and tourism perspective, but we want businesses and people to come to Sussex and sort of strike out along new paths. As Andrew highlighted, you know, these have been challenging times and everybody has their own story to tell. And there are undoubtedly going to be difficulties ahead. Who knows what the Christmas period will bring, and who knows what the implications are for the new year. But there does seem to be some hope on the horizon, and the announcements earlier on this week around vaccinations and, you know, the opportunities to get back to whatever the new normal might look like gives us that optimism, should give us that hope, which was, you know, Mark was touching on. You know, Mark, you said you felt optimistic about the future. I share that optimism. I hope that the people, you know, the 114 participants in this seminar this morning, I have no doubt share that optimism. And I think you highlighted a couple of pointers there were replicated by your colleagues on the panel around the importance of innovation. You know, you as a sector have innovated to make the best of a difficult set of circumstances. And you've done that through your staff and your people. So that investment and encouragement and motivation of your people and staff came out really, really clearly for me. And you've obviously done a fantastic job in bringing your people along on what has been quite a difficult journey. I suppose, you know, what does this mean for East Sussex Recovery? And Christina asked me also to touch upon the East Sussex Recovery Plan, which I should stress is not a county council recovery plan. It is very much Team East Sussex's plan. You know, the collaboration of partners, of businesses, of local authorities, you know, coming together to help shape a prosperous economic future for East Sussex. And they identified 6 missions, some of which chime incredibly nicely with what I've heard today. So that ability to think local and act local, to build skills and create jobs, to help fast forward business, to create a better place for people to have fuller lives, to think about the cleaner economy, a greener transport, for example, and then finally that digital investment and environment. And those 6 missions that are set out in the Team East Sussex Recovery Plan chime so well with what I've heard over the last couple of hours or so. And I think, you know, that links me on to that pan-Sussex recovery. So, you know, believe it or not, the moment the pandemic started, we started to turn our heads to, well, what might recovery start to look like? And a very, very different set of circumstances. You know, at the time this set out, who could have foreseen the length of time it has taken to get to the place we're at today? But I suppose to give you that assurance that, you know, we're not just looking at East Sussex, we are looking wider, exactly the points that Nathanial and Mark have been driving home over the last couple of years with the Sussex Modern brand. You know, Sussex means so much, be it east, west, and I think, you know, that's driven home to me by the fact that Visit Britain estimated that the loss to the tourism sector as a result of this pandemic is some 37 billion. And 22 billion of that is down to the domestic market. So that ability to work pan Sussex, to collaborate, is absolutely crucial. And I'm really fortunate to be able to chair Culture East Sussex, one of the many arms of the Local Enterprise Partnerships Team East Sussex brand. And what amazes me is the resilience of the sector, not just from our larger organisations and venues, but also those organisations that pull together freelancers to provide a cultural offer to East Sussex is absolutely phenomenal. And how the sector has transformed itself to match the demands that this pandemic has given us is quite something. You know, what the culture in East Sussex offers is more than just a venue or an offer. It's about engagement. It's about inclusiveness. It's making sure that disadvantaged groups have access to the fantastic resources that you all have. That access for all. And to quote one of the cultural leaders, you know, it's about whether you're a hospitality venue, a cultural venue, a heritage venue. It's about us getting together and putting back on that show for Sussex as we go forward. And your innovation and collaboration, I think, and shared experiences and learning are the ways in which we will do this. So, you know, what a session over the last couple of hours, what a lot of information, and trying to draw some sort of conclusions to try and summarize that. I feel I won't do it justice, but, you know, what I would say is the future definitely feels positive. It feels so much more positive. Granted, there are some uncertainties ahead, but by comparison to where we were, say, at the back end of the summer, and as we went into this sort of autumn and then November lockdown, it feels like there is the sort of proverbial light at the end of the tunnel. I think the Sussex Modern is just an amazing brand. It's a brilliant brand. It's got so much enthusiasm behind it. How we get everyone to share in it, I think, is you know, one of those next steps. And I touched upon this, you know, about inclusivity, access to all. And I love, you know, to quote Stuart Drew from the Dullawall Pavilion, now anybody can come into that venue. You know, they can come in wearing a pair of swimmers, still dusting the sand off their toes. You know, getting people in, getting that inclusivity is absolutely crucial. And what the sector does with disadvantaged groups just frankly blows my mind. And as I mentioned, you know, tourism and culture means many things to different people, and the challenge is, you know, finding that balance between what turns people on and what turns people off. You know, the future over the next few months and over the coming years, it is not set, and we have, as a collaboration, as a collective, fantastic opportunity to influence it. And as someone said on the chat, this is less about a competition. We share the same goals. It's our collective success that I think will drive Sussex to the fore. If I might end, Christina, and just reflecting on some of the top tips that your panelists gave us, you know, it is a long haul, but what I've heard over the last couple of hours or so is that you'll be ready. You are ready. You're excited. You're enthused. It's been a long, hard slog, but your resilience over the last 8-9 months or so is what will take you over the line and create what I think is going to be a fantastic offer for Sussex. There was talk of well-being, and I think we mustn't lose track on that. And Rob touched on it. It has been a long old slog. People are tired. People are fatigued. And I think, you know, with the optimism, the light at the end of the tunnel, the green shoots, whatever you wish to call it, we've just got to help carry people over the line. And that support to our people and our staff is going to be absolutely crucial. You know, that collaboration, that shared learning allows us to, I think, you know, reach that point. I also recognise totally the points around communication, not just the communication that's coming down from government, but also how we get our people and our staff ready to embrace what the spring and hopefully what a prosperous summer will bring. The points about your agility and you know, that ability to move quickly and supporting, you know, your supply chain, local businesses is absolutely crucial. So I'll end there. This has been a real challenge to try and summarise this, and I find, you know, with these Zoom conferences, not only do you want to keep a focus on what people are saying on screen, but you're seeing the, you know, amount of stuff that goes on the chat is priceless. It's such a rich opportunity to lift bits of information. And, you know, during normal conferences and seminars, those elements in the chat boxes are probably what's going on tables. That, you know, as someone who's summarising, or as the panel or hosts, you know, are not always privileged to see. So that chat has provided a rich source of information to help, you know, sort of shape some of my summarising points. So without further ado, Christina, I'll hand back to you. And, you know, thank you so much for hosting this. It has been a really wonderful and humbling experience, actually, to hear from the panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rupert. And we're hoping that you and your team will help us work with West Sussex to put together a bid to get the funding we require to promote Sussex as a great visitor destination. And I also want to just thank the other panelists for giving up their time, and all of the attendees for listening and putting so much useful stuff in the chat. And finally, thank the Hospitality Association, Joanne Rogers of Prowse PR, and your Eastbourne bid, who have helped run this event. I think that's it. Only to say that we will follow this up in the new year, and hopefully we'll have more news about where we're going with this and how we can all work together to make Sussex a great visitor destination and underpin the economy of the whole county. So thank you very much, and I'll say goodbye.